Welcome to KJ Masterclass. Today on Health and Wellness, we are joined by Karl, an NASM Master Trainer and Neurological Wellness Specialist. He has spent the last 2 decades helping uh, people move better, think sharper, and age stronger. And he is the founder of Neuromotor Training with clinics across the US and Mexico. He works at the intersection of neuroscience, movement, and longevity, designing programs for people who refuse to let age define what they are capable of. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Hey, thanks very much. I appreciate being here very much.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Carl. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one can build stronger brain and a body at any age and much more. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Oh, sure. I can say that I had a little over a 35-year career as a musician, a drummer. And, it was fine for quite a long time, but I got kind of bored those last few years and didn't know what to do, didn't know what to do in my life. I wasn't feeling satisfied with the music career anymore. So simultaneously, what would happen is I'd been gaining a lot of weight, eating too much, drinking too much, not exercising, and in our imperial system here, our weights and measures, I'm 6 feet 2 inches, so a little under 2 meters. I weighed close to 300 pounds back in 2008. So that is obese for a guy my size, which maybe is 135 kilos, something like that, is way too big for my height. And I had health problems, many health problems. And without going into detail, all I'll say is that one day at my physical, my doctor told me, you've got to make changes because you're going down the wrong path. You're going to die sooner than you should if you don't make changes. And I was so embarrassed, so humiliated, and so afraid. I called a trainer. I started working out with him the next day. I went there 3 days a week for one-on-one training with him for a year. The other 2 days a week on weekdays, I still went to him for unguided, um, let's say, training in cardiovascular. I went to him 5 days a week for a year, lost 80 pounds or, maybe 35 kilos or something like that. And I felt so good, I decided maybe I'll try personal training. So I did. I did National Academy of Sports Medicine. A year later, I went for a new program they had called the Master Trainer Program. And I'm not trying to impress anybody. I just want to know more, right? So out of 40,000 approximate trainers there are in their system now, there's, to my knowledge, there are 173 master trainers. We just simply wanted to know the most we could and be able to teach that. And I mean, that's not all that I look at for modalities. I have a lot of things I've learned from many geniuses around the world and put them all together in what I feel is the most appropriate training for all people. And hence the reason I call it neuromotor training, because that company name that I have is really designed around or named around what we do. It's not just our muscles that move us. Without nerves and without bones, we're not going anywhere. So when I went back to school in 2011, I believe it was, for nutrition, I met somebody, a professor who had Parkinson's. That was my first experience working with somebody with a movement disorder. Didn't know what to do, but I had my son was working on his degree at the time, PhD, happened to be in Parkinson's. So it was great to be able to call him. And although he wasn't sure exactly what to do, he pointed me in the direction of people who could teach me, and I never looked back. And now, while I'm known for my work around the world in Parkinson's and working with them and managing disease symptoms and slowing disease progression, I mean, what we do here is really designed for all people because it's centered around brain, body, and bones, meaning our brain and our nervous systems, our body, how, our muscles, and then we have bones, and that's kind of a separate issue, but it's not a separate issue. Not many trainers think about bone density, but we do, and we help to reverse osteoporosis here at my gym. So it's a complete, holistic intervention to help people improve movement, reduce fall risk, and live the longest health span within their lifespan.
Absolutely, absolutely, Carl. Thank you for that. So, to understand it for my audience, a lot of people who are in different parts of the world, in smaller places, and they want to understand how should they understand what is it that you are trying to say with what you are saying, with what you are doing. Is it about more of longevity, or is it more about anti-aging, that you want people to age gracefully in a nice manner?
Well, that's a really good question. I'll speak for the United States in saying that my country here, I believe, and this isn't my opinion, I have no data to back this up. I believe that the idea of getting old is something in aging and becoming less mobile, I should say, less independent, and less able to do things is largely a mindset that a lot of people buy into because they just think, oh, I'm in my 60s or 70s and I should probably be slowing down. I should retire. And nothing wrong with retiring, but slowing down definitely is not an option. Well, unless they have to for some reason. But a lot of times it's just expected. Well, when are you going to retire, Carl? I turned 65 a month ago. I feel like I'm 30. I'm stronger than I've ever been. My body composition is really good. I'm proud of my numbers now. I had to work hard to get here and stay here, but I feel way better now than I did 10 years, 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. Way better. And my mindset is I feel 30 in my head. No, I don't always feel that way in my body, but I don't feel 65. And I refuse to even think about retiring because I like what I do a lot. And I'm always wanting to learn and keep growing. So that's one thing is mindset. But another thing, when we look at the people who live the longest, we look at the documentary, I think it's a 4-part series called The Blue Zones. And just, if you just look around, if you know anybody who's in their 90s or 100, and there's a lady, she was just on the news here the other day. She's 104 or maybe 101, whatever it is. She's over 100. She's still walking. She's still moving. She's still mentally sharp. And when they say, how did you do it? She says, never stop moving. Move every day. If you stop moving, you're going to stop living eventually. And then we could go into details on why people tend to have a spiral downward as they get older. But we could also talk about how to gain muscle, bone, and brain capacity and move better at any age. I'll go over whatever pathway you want.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, from a common person's perspective, what is the best way they should understand? But before that, you talked about the US, you talked about the mindset, Carl. I want to understand people who are, say, looking at the 60s, 65, uh, in the US, why is it that they are also not looking at the US system that says that, and correct me if I'm incorrect at any place, that the US system allows for a Supreme Court judge to be a judge and give judgments as long as they are, they are alive.
Well,
So the system itself is telling that, listen, on one side, you are not okay for 60, but a Supreme Court judge is okay till the end of his life. Means,
well,
can't we understand the contradiction in our own system if you look at it from that point on view? That's the biggest example that it's all in the mind. Judges can live. If correct me if I'm wrong, but hopefully that assumption is correct. That the Supreme Court judges they don't retire in that sense in any other part of the world.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up. That's a brilliant question. Nobody's brought this up in an interview with me. And, I may use this in the future for an example. So it is a contradiction. We have an almost 80-year-old president. Our previous president was 80, 81. I don't know. We've had a lot of presidents who are older. Not sure how many have been in their 80s. But then we have our Supreme Court, and it's a lifetime appointment. And personally, and I know other people who feel this way too, it shouldn't be like that. I mean, when we look at the cognitive abilities of, I'll even say our current president, I question his ability a lot of times to make any decision that is smart and right. And our previous president, well, they called him Sleepy Joe, but I don't know what to say. I don't hang around with him. I wasn't able to see him or Donald Trump every day and know, but it seems to me almost unfathomable to elect somebody that old who's going to lead the free world, if you will. I mean, supposedly the most powerful person in the world. I highly doubt that, but a lot of people like to believe it. It's a contradiction. They want people to retire earlier, yet they're out there doing their thing. Yeah, Mitch McConnell's 84 years old. He's finally going to retire. I mean, a lot of these people aren't practicing what they preach. And I don't know how it is, in your country. I know that in certain places, I hear that in Italy, I have no data for this. I know in Mexico, where I have 2 clinics and I'm working a lot, pretty much every month I go there almost. In other countries, Bolivia is in horrible turmoil now. Venezuela was terrible, and maybe it still is. I don't know. And Cuba, I mean, they have just horrible situations where what they preach is not what they practice. And I think this is only an opinion. I probably shouldn't talk about it too much because I don't want to upset anybody, because it's only an opinion and I don't know enough to make probably an informed decision. Is that a lot of this is just a power and a money grab. There's a lot of money in being in the government. So Donald Trump made $2 billion last year. So I don't know what to say about that. But by and large, the society is, we're aging. People are obese. People are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And their doctors, by and large, they're not doing that much about it. We do have an awareness, though, that's growing, but growing very, very slowly, in that we do need to keep moving. We do need to stay away from the junk food and the processed food and the chemicals and the engineered food that are designed to keep us eating and eating and eating more and more and more. But it's a very slow awareness. It's a slow movement because it's rampant. It's everywhere. It's crazy. So I put this Brain, Body, Bones book out last month. It came out because we need to realize earlier is better, that we must build and maintain sufficient muscle mass throughout our lifetime. You have, as you age, you have a thing that happens called obligatory aging muscle decay. Not a term I made up. This is in the world of science. You're just gonna lose muscle whether you like it or not. So you have to work harder to build and maintain that muscle. Because when you have less muscle as you age, or anytime, but it's going to happen as you age if you let it, then muscle places tension on bones. So that actually gives, the more tension a muscle can give on a regular basis, like weightlifting, resistance training, or impact forces, jumping or jump roping or running, that actually helps to build bone density. Because muscle, our body, our brain, our body, and our bones, they respond best for growth. They respond best through demand placed upon them. If we place no demand of thinking or memory upon our brain, circuits shut down and we kind of lose it. Dementia might set in, probably will set in. No demand on the muscles means muscle atrophy, sarcopenia, no muscle growth, which can lead into, and often leads into, osteopenia, osteoporosis, because we need to place demand upon our muscles to make sure they're working, they're being strained, not in a bad way, being worked, let's say that. And torn down them and recover, tear down, recover, just like you do in resistance training. And then that our bones respond to demand, which is tension on the muscles, because more tension means greater bone density. I'll just finish this stream of curvy consciousness down the weavy road of saying that when we have less muscle, we're at a higher fall risk. When we have less muscle, we have more brittle bones, generally speaking. It means we're at higher fracture risk. Higher fall risk means more likely to fall, more likely to fracture. The numbers are very, very clear. Age 65 and up, a person who falls and breaks a hip or a femur, up to 30% are dead within a year. It depends on what study you read. Some say 20, 25, 30, whatever, it's bad. And the remaining percentage, most of them are not moving as well as they were before they fell down. So we have the beginning of the likely spiral downward in quality of movement, which leads to lesser quality of life because they went into their 60s, 70s at a higher fall risk, brittle bones, and it's not good. And then we have the whole brain body connection, which I'd love to cover real quick too, if you don't mind.
Right, right. So, I want to understand from that perspective, body mind connection, Carl, is that you talk about extending health span within one's lifespan.
Yeah.
And when you do that, should we focus on the health span or should we focus on lifespan? When does one or when should one begin about this? You talked about mindset, you talk about neuroplasticity. When is the right time to decide about these things? Whether it should be health span first, whether it should be lifespan first.
Okay, I really like that question. That's another great question. Okay, I'd be looking at your health span first because, it's interesting how many people, there's no judgment here, by the way. I mean, I used to be obese, for years I was obese and I was not moving and I was just really just, it was horrible. So I've been there. But I also want to know what it's like to turn that around. So when I say this, though, having been there, obese and all that, my quality of life back then wasn't nearly as good. I couldn't move as well. Honestly, I don't even think I was thinking as well. But let's say if we were to look at lifespan, we could look at trying to stay alive longer. We could live a more sedentary life and maybe live a long, long time. I'll take my dad for an example. And I loved my dad, and I don't mean anything in a bad way about my dad. My dad passed away at age 84. His health span was probably up till age 73, at which point he had really completely stopped taking care of himself. He had been moving around too much. It was pretty sedentary for a few years, from late 60s to early 70s. And then he had a problem one day. He had to go to the hospital, and because of his blood bleeding issues, like he was on a blood thinner and he was not getting it monitored, and he should have. The Coumadin, you got to monitor that stuff. He ended up hemorrhaging in his spine, had a hematoma, and it was 2 months before they could figure out in the hospital if there was nerve damage. Well, there was nerve damage after the hematoma went away, but they couldn't operate on it. This was permanent nerve damage. So he was never able to walk again. So he lived for years in a nursing home bed, and he happened to be blind. And that's a completely different story from a very rare set of 2 different eye conditions he had, that extremely rare. So not worth talking about that. But the bottom line is He would have been blind anyways, even if he was moving well. But he was blind and bedridden for years. I mean, his quality of life was absolutely horrible. He's in pain all the time. He's got bed sores. He's using a bedpan, and people have to wipe his rear end because of, I mean, all this the things in the catheter, all these things that humiliate us. That nobody wants this. So we can never go back and know what he would have had he taken care of himself. But I would venture to say if he put any effort ever into taking care of himself, instead of drinking alcohol to oblivion every night and eating like there's no tomorrow. I'm sorry, I love you, Dad, but he didn't take care of himself and he paid a price. And I believe that could have been prevented had he taken care of himself. Maybe he would have died at 84 anyways, but he would have been conscious and moving around the last day before he died. You know what I mean? We don't know. We'll never know. But lifespan is one thing. He had a lifespan of 84, a health span of about 73-ish years. That's 11 years of bad health, a quality of life that was horrible. If we concentrate on living healthy, like eating well, and trying to avoid the things that we know are bad for us, I don't care what anybody says, health benefits of alcohol, there really aren't any. I mean, you can go and find research that says there are. Okay, so maybe you have a glass of wine or a shot of brandy, probably not going to kill you. But you drink it every day into excess, you are going to kill yourself. Your brain will die and your liver is going to pay, and other problems, depends upon the person and their genetics too. So if we stay away from the processed foods and the 250 something or 60 something kinds of sugar out there, about 80% of those are fake sugars, according to Dr. Robert Lustig, author of my favorite book of all time called Metabolical, is just if you eat food that, let's say, your great grandmother would have eaten 100 years ago, you're probably going to live a lot better quality of life because you're not eating the crappy stuff that's toxins, and those toxins, they'll manifest in whatever ways they do. For some people, it goes right up to the brain after a few years, and then they have dementia or Parkinson's or who knows. They say that Parkinson's and Alzheimer's live in the gut for 10 to 20 years before it makes it to the brain. So I'd be working on health span because I'd rather live a shorter life and get a lot of life out of my days than to have a longer life where I can't really do anything.
Absolutely, Carl. Now let's talk about brain and body, as we talked about. Brain and
Sure.
body, and if we add bones to it, that becomes the name of your new book. But if we
Yeah.
focus on brain and body itself, a lot of times our lifestyle is that, we eat anything, we think the way we want to, and the actions of body starts impacting the mind. After
Mm-hmm.
all these years, how do I make my brain reverse what my body did all these years? How does that work? Because people then start thinking, I'm getting old, and this is how it feels like when you get old, even when you are in your 30s, in your 40s, and forget about the 50s. How should
This,
one deal with this thing called, how do I let the brain take the lead and make the body run according to it?
yeah, that's a loaded question, but it's also one of my favorite ones. So I'll try to be brief and succinct. Um, I've had on my podcast or the radio show I did on iHeart for a couple of years. Oh man, his name is Dr. B, and I cannot remember his last name. Um, anyways, they call him Dr. B. Dr. B is, I think, Florida based. It doesn't matter. He gave the most interesting discussion about, or I should say, commentary about gut health, gut biome. And you got Perlmutter and Hyman and all these other great people out there who talk about this too, and numerous others. We know that the data is very loud and very clear and very all over the place, supporting the fact that if you can discipline yourself through decisions to eat certain things that are healthy and avoid unhealthy things for the most part, your gut biome will change and you will start to crave the things that you've been training yourself to eat through conscious decision making and discipline. So I know in my case, one of the things that happened, and there's two parts to this. One of them is a decision to change and a commitment to stay with it. That is not easy, I'm telling you. I think diet's probably the hardest thing for any of us to change, definitely hardest for me. I'll just say on a personal note that this year, after a lifetime of not liking fruit, except for an occasional apple or banana, I didn't like fruit at all. The doctor upstairs from me started running an IV drip program where we're getting various concoctions in there, whatever. But because I travel a lot, I wanted to really boost my immunity and avoid getting sick. So a massive dose of, glutathione, vitamin B complex C, magnesium, and zinc. Well, as it turns out, and you be careful when you do this, folks. So you might want to check with your doctor. I have to say that I'm not a doctor, but I'd say, if you're going to start slamming a lot of zinc, well, too much of a good thing is good for you. A good thing is good for you until it's too much, and then all things are bad when it becomes too much for you. So I don't know how much zinc is bad for anybody. I just know that with this direct IV into the blood of this concoction and pretty heavy doses of zinc in there, I started craving fruit. That's never happened in 65 years. And so I don't know. I'm not saying you should go do that, but your gut biome will change if you stick with it. And they say there's about a 30-day process there of really trying to stay disciplined and changing it. The zinc thing, all I know is that I brought raspberries and blueberries to work today. I never would have done that in my entire life. I even like strawberries. It turns out that zinc is oftentimes a catalyst for the changing of taste buds. And my taste buds want fruit now. I eat it every day, oranges and an apple and berries, and that's crazy. I never did that my whole life. So I got a little off track, I think, but when we're talking about the brain controlling our brain does drive everything, and our decisions are our decisions. I did a video on this the other day about discipline. It's like discipline is when you decide to do something one time and then you just do it like you are breathing oxygen. You don't have a choice, you're going to die. Well, if you decide I'm going to eat well and I'm going to exercise on a daily basis, you won't die if you don't do those things. But it should be, if you really want results, if you're really truly actually wanting and committed to the changes you want, then you have to change in your brain your behaviors. And it starts with free will of a decision and then sticking to whatever it is that you plan you put yourself on, or some expert helps you with, or a coach or whatever. If we connect real quick, I can do this in 1 minute or less. If we connect brain to body to bones, our brain is connected to and runs in a circuit with our central and peripheral nervous systems. So brain, body, bones is our brain decides, I want to take a step, for example, or I want to lift the coffee to my mouth and drink the coffee, something I know a lot about because I drink it every day. Anyways, because those run in a continuous loop, a circuit, if there's any interruption in any of those, you won't be taking the step or drinking the coffee, possibly, depends on where the short is in the system. But if they're working well, know that it is a single entity. It's not a separate entity, the nervous systems in the brain. It's a single entity. Well, your brain drives through the central nervous system, the spinal column, and then off of the spine through the, vertebrae that comes out. The peripheral nerves for your arms and your fingers and your toes. Well, those nerves are attached to muscles. So the nerves are going to tell your muscles the movement that they're supposed to make based on your decision to make the movement. So if I want to lift a weight, I want to do a chest press, leg press, a squat, stand up, sit down, take a step, whatever it is, my nervous system via my brain making the initial thought and sending the signal through the nervous systems to make the muscles move. Well, they're connected. The brain, nerves, muscles, brain, body, brain, muscles are connected. Then at the ends of the muscles, we have the tendons that go into the cartilage, that go into the bone. So like we said, is when we place demand on muscles, we are putting tension on bones. So the muscles connected to the bones, this tension on the bones actually creates the osteoblasts to help us maintain or even build more cortical soft bone tissue, which is what we're losing when we have brittle bones like osteopenia or porosis. So the brain drives the body drives the bones, brain, muscle, muscle, bones, and it's all connected. And let's go backwards. I said 1 minute. That was probably 5. This one I can do in 1 minute or less, I promise. When we look at the body moving, we do any kind of movement, whether it's resistance training, walking, swimming, running, rowing, jumping, anything physical, we know that our heart rate's going to increase just a little bit. That increased heart rates helps to oxygenate the brain by giving more blood to the brain, and the brain uses so much oxygen and blood. It's like, I believe the number is 80% of our blood and oxygen goes to the brain because it needs it more than any other part of the body. So as John Rady from Harvard said, an MD, best-selling author, as countless researchers, well-known people out there are saying in the research, that the part of the body that benefits the most from any kind of exercise is the brain. It's because you get oxygen. It's because when you get the brain, the blood flow going in the brain, and you're oxygenating the brain and you're working your body, the brain creates neurotrophic growth factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, glial-derived neurotrophic factor, and those are created by the brain. They circulate in the brain, they land on brain cells, and they help to preserve cellular structure, integrity, functionality, and longevity. So it works both ways, man. The brain tells the body what to do, and the body moving helps the brain stay healthy to continue working optimally.
Absolutely, absolutely, Carl. There is so much to learn about all this from you, and I'm sure a lot of people across the world would want to connect with you, learn more from how you think, how to do, and also perhaps be your client. Also learn from your new book, Brain, Body, Bones. What's the best way for them to do so?
Thank you. Well, you can go to brainbodybones.com. It's going to take you to the Amazon, who is my publisher. If there are any publishers out there, I'm willing to talk. Amazon's my publisher. So you might have to be, you might have to search Brain Body Bones to find it on Amazon. But if you're in the United States, you can just go to brainbodybones.com, and anywhere in the world you'll see it. And you should be able to buy it on Amazon if you have Amazon. It's available in English and Spanish. It's also available in Kindle, audio, and paperback formats. The other way, if they have any question about the work I do here in my clinics in Mexico and the one in Nashville and the hospital. We're in a big hospital system in Mexico too. Is just go to karlsterling.com. That's Karl with a K, Karl, Sterling, Sterling. Karlsterling.com. That's got everything we do there. And we are coming up with an online learning platform, subscription-based, 3-tier level, probably in the next month at the very most, because the framework is there. It's going to be in English and Spanish. And just a toggle switch will switch it, and it's going to be a really cool platform for continued learning.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.